What is going on, everyone? It is College Football Talk, and I'm your host, Hunter DeLauder, and today is Week 12 recap. We're going to diagnose and take a look at all the biggest action of this past weekend in college football as we hit the home stretch here of the regular season. Plenty of action and storylines went down this past weekend. The SEC race still has no clear answers. So does the Big 12. It's just a big, giant, jumbled up mess. So we're going to get into all of that. Oregon survives. Georgia looks great. Texas holds on, and Florida gets a big win. So we're going to dive into all of that. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast at DeLauder Hunter on Twitter, on Instagram, Hunter.DeLauder83. Trying to get to 200 subscribers, guys. So make sure you guys are hitting that red button, liking and sharing the videos as well. Just keep pushing. If you know anyone that's a college football fan, tell them to subscribe. Not want to miss it. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it here because it's going to be a quicker episode today, but we're going to dive into all of it. And we're going to start with number 12, Georgia, dominating number 7, Tennessee, 31-17. This was the big bill-up main event game of the day, at least coming into the weekend, and it certainly delivered for the most part. Tennessee came out rocking early, 10-0. They took a lead just like that, and they quieted a crowd that was juiced up and ready to roll. Shout out to all the Georgia fans that were there who made that blackout crowd. The fans wanted a blackout, and they got it, and it was a spectacle to be seen. If you haven't seen all the photos and videos, go back and check it out because it was awesome. But Tennessee came out of the gates fast, 10-0. It was almost like the LSU game last week where you have such a riled up, charged up environment like that in LSU, and then Bama just comes in there, jumps on the board early and never looks back. And for a couple minutes, you thought, okay, is this going to happen here this week? But credit to Georgia, with the season on the line, backs against the wall mentality, that championship mindset. They make sure this team never wavers, and that's what happened here. Dawgs would go on a 31-7 run to close out the game. And the big story of the night, Carson Beck. It was his best game of the season. He looked like his last year's self. He went 25 of 40, 347 yards, 3 total touchdowns. He had 2 through the air and 1 on the ground. He had no interceptions. He played out of his mind. He looked like himself. And for once, like this year, it was the first time I think all year was a complete game by this whole team. Yes, there were still some drops. Yes, there were still, some missed throws. The run game is still a little iffy, but I still think I give credit to them for running the football enough with how banged up they are. Dylan Bell went down in this game. Nate Frazier had an okay game, but listen, they were out. Roderick Robinson, obviously, Branson Robinson, Trevor Etienne's been out, or he's out. He's going to be hopefully back maybe the next few weeks. So right now they're playing with a bunch of freshmen running back, and so they just eclipsed over the 100-yard mark. So it's enough, I'd say. But I mean, this story of the night was Carson Beck played out of his mind. The tight end showed up in a big way. Oscar Delp, Ben Urasek had a really nice day. The offensive line protected great. They didn't allow a single sack on the night. Tennessee only had 2 tackles for loss in the whole night. And this is the same unit that gave up 5 sacks last week. Now, a big reason I think also that had such great success was, Monroe Freeling played left tackle on Saturday. Ernest Green did not start. I thought he was a huge reason why they struggled so much last week. So he did not even start in this game. So I think that was a big time moment right there. And obviously it paid off because the offensive line looked great. So, and then the defensively for Georgia, 167 yards passing they allowed. They sat Nico Maliava 5 times. Tennessee, I mean, they still had their run game going. I think Tennessee almost averaged about 5 yards a carry. So Dylan Sampson had a pretty good night. But, I mean, to pretty much put it on lockdown for the entirety of the game and through the air, they pitched a second half shutout. And I think one of the bigger stats, they only allowed 1 pass play of 15 yards or more. Georgia had 11 of those. So you cut back, pretty much eliminate the explosive plays, and you limit any sort of passing game, and you got after the quarterback defensively. It's the perfect recipe for success. It was pretty much the Texas game all over again defensively, just swarming all over, swarming to the football, not allowing anything to happen. And credit to Georgia with this backs against the wall mentality. They had to win this game to keep their season alive, and they got it done. So they will have UMass and Georgia Tech to finish out the season. But if they do that, they should be primed and ready for a playoff run. Tennessee needs to finish the year out strong. If UTSA, then Vanderbilt. So, excuse me. So they need to, flush this one and hopefully get back on track next week. So, all right, moving on here to number 1 Oregon surviving in Madison against Wisconsin, 16-13. The Badgers led this one 13-6 heading into the fourth quarter, but Oregon found a way at the very end. This is an Oregon team that's 8th consecutive game, multiple time zones. They've been flying back and forth on this stretch that they've been on. So you knew maybe at some point that maybe something like this would happen. I thought Oregon was going to be able to take care of business. Just how they just haven't been tested at all. It's been so businesslike, it just looks like it's becoming so easy to them. They're going in, they're taking care of business, never giving any teams ever a chance to ever make it competitive. And I thought that would happen. It did not. Wisconsin gave it everything they could, but at the end, Oregon found a way to win, and it was Jordan James's rushing touchdown that tied it, and then Atticus Sappington's go-ahead field goal with just over 2.5 to play in the entire game. But I think MVP of this game was Evan Stewart. He had 10 catches for 92 yards, and he stepped up big time as that go-to guy for Dylan Gabriel, who had a quiet night for some of the numbers that he's been putting up this season. This was certainly one of his more in-check games. So, but again, credit to Oregon for getting a big-time win on the road. And listen, good teams always find a way to win, and certainly Oregon is that. So credit to them. All right, moving on now. Number 3, Texas holds off Arkansas 20-10. This was a game that I thought Texas, clearly had the advantages in, and it'd be really tough for Arkansas to find a way to, keep this competitive. Well, Arkansas got it to the fourth quarter. It was a competitive game, and but again, credit to Texas for finding a way. They just did enough. I mean, Texas was up pretty much the whole game, and they just couldn't ever find that put away type play earlier than it needed to be. In Arkansas, credit to them. Again, they just kind of kept hanging around, chipping away, and eventually they cut it to within 3 or 4 before Texas scored again. Quinn Ewers, another average game. I mean, honestly, you take away the Florida game and probably the Michigan game, he's been barely average this year. It's certainly something to keep an eye on going down the road here in these bigger type games, because they cannot afford some of these teams are going to be playing down the stretch here. They need Quinn Ewers that was playing against Florida, against Michigan type Quinn Ewers, not the Georgia, not the Arkansas type. Quinn Ewers, 20-32, under 200 yards, 176, and 2 touchdowns. But again, it's just been really lackluster, just average type stuff. And when you get into the playoffs and stuff like that, if they get there, you can't be just settling for that. It can't happen like that. But Matthew Golden stepped up big, 2 touchdowns. He had the big fourth quarter one that pulled away at the end. And Arkansas's 2 turnovers really killed them in this game as well, because Texas didn't have any. And Arkansas a couple times really just screwed themselves out of drives, turning the football over. And they can't do that when you're trying to pull off an upset like that at home. So again, credit to Texas for finding a way to win. But you want to see more consistency offensively, especially from the quarterback position for sure. All right. Florida gets a massive win at the Swamp, defeating number 22 LSU 27-16. They snap LSU's 5-game winning streak against the Gators. And listen, this was a defensive back and forth affair early. Both teams really, they scored once in the first half. Elijah Badger had a really nice touchdown pass. Aaron Anderson caught one. DJ Lagway was back in this one. So was Badger. Obviously, both of them came back. It was tied at 10 at half. But, I mean, LSU controlled this game in every major statistical category. But credit, again, Florida for finding a way. but it was Florida's defense, first and foremost, that stepped up massive in this one. LSU entered Saturday giving up just 6 sacks on the entire season. The Gators had 7 on the night. Shamar James was the biggest defensive player on the night for the Gators. He had 11 tackles, 2 sacks, led the team in both categories. And listen, even LSU ran the ball, actually probably one of the better games of the entire season. But credit to Florida, they really did a nice job at kind of slowing it down and sometimes putting it on just lockdown majority of the second half. First half, they were getting gashed some. Second half, they really got it back in check. And it was the explosive plays that Florida had that LSU didn't. LSU would go on these big, long drives and not come away with any points or field goals. Or Florida, they capitalized on the big plays. There was a deep shot to Chimere Dike, the touchdown pass to Elijah Badger, the big-time 55-yard run from Jaden Ball that ended up being, the knockout blow. That's really the difference of this game. Florida's pass rush and the Gators capitalizing and making the necessary plays to win the game that LSU couldn't. Because LSU outgained Florida in passing, rushing, first downs 25-13, third downs 13 to LSU went 13 to 24. Florida went 3 of 9. LSU ran 92 plays compared to Florida's 43, and I think the biggest one of them all was time of possession. LSU had 41 minutes and 43 seconds worth of time of possession compared to Florida's 18-17. Massive difference right there. Crazy. And again, credit to Florida's defense for making the stops. They bent, but they did not break. And that's what you have to do when you need a big time win. That's what you have to do defensively. And which was even more crazy is that LSU who's been notoriously one of the worst penalized teams on the year, actually played a decent game penalized wise. They only had 3 penalties compared to Florida's 7. Florida, I think, had like 4 or 5 pre-snap penalties. There was a point in the second half where Florida's on the scoreboard, the Jumbotron, they had to put like quiet offense at work. Like that's how bad it was, to where, they were having to tell the fans to shut up pretty much. Like, because they were too many false starts, there was a bad special teams blunder. But at the end of the day, Florida gets that 5th win. They needed to win 2 out of their next 3 here as the regular season comes to a close to get the bowl eligibility. They get the 5th one. Now, you have Ole Miss at home. They are currently a 10-point underdog with the Rebels coming in. After that, though, you go to Florida State. I believe it's a 7 or 7:30 kickoff the very next week. So it's there for the taking. Can Florida get that big 6th win that they couldn't do last year? So, but again, if you're LSU, obviously the season at this point is anything that you had, preseason planned is out the window now. Just too much inconsistency, offensively, defensively. I thought they played a decent game, but they just too many explosive plays allowed. It's there. I think the coaching staff's right. I think some of the players there they have are really good. They just need to surround those players with more talent. They need to bring in some more guys, and they need to make sure that Bryce Underwood comes in as the guy in this next recruiting class. But if you're Florida, again, everything's there. Just need one more win. One more win. All right. Kansas shocks number 6 BYU 17-13. The Jayhawks get a massive win on the road. They came into this one as a 2.5-point underdog. And believe it or not, it maybe some people thought, I maybe thought, hey, what does Vegas know that everyone else does it? Where you're thinking maybe there's an injury. Is there something? It's just that this is just a dangerous team where to the crowd that says the you are what the record says you are crowd, you need to eat your crow here, because this is one of those teams you do not want to mess with. Right now, they're one of the most dangerous 4-win teams you'll find. And they showed it on Saturday. Did they need a little bit of luck? Possibly, yes. But I think they also did a great job at shutting down a BYU offense that can, for the most part, move the ball down the field effectively enough and score points. And they did not allow them to do that at all. 1 second here. I'm just trying to type something out here. Perfect. Because I totally forgot that. All right. Anyway, so Kansas made the game ugly. That's what you're going to have to do on the road and at BYU. That crowd is as crazy. One of the more underrated crowds you'll find in college football. Well, they slowed it down. They made it ugly, low-scoring affair. BYU led 13-10 in the fourth quarter, but it was the turning point was a special teams fumble. Evan Johnson fumbled a punt that Kansas recovered at the BYU 3. And then a play later, they punched it in, took the lead 17-13 with just about 13 minutes to go in the game. But BYU's final 3 drives ended up being a punt, and turnover on downs. So it wasn't like Kansas scored with less than 2 minutes to go and you just ran out of time. 3 chances to score a touchdown at least, or even put a couple field goals up and take the lead. Could not, got stonewalled. And credit to Kansas. They have had a very rocky season, to say the least. It's with a lot of preseason, hype, I'd say, to Kansas standards, and it came out flat and just fell off a cliff in a snap of fingers. But listen, Iowa State, big time win. Now on the road at BYU, and I don't want to say anything, but that's 2 ranked wins against, at the time, Big 12 favorites. Now they go to Colorado, or they take on Colorado. I forget where that game is, but Colorado better be ready, because this is a team that is dangerous right now, and there's a few teams like this right now in college football. You do not want to mess around with this team and just think you're going to get a win based off the record. So for BYU, though, they're still atop the Big 12. Their season is on the line next week against an Arizona State team. That is another one of those teams where you do not want to be messing around with right now. Arizona State is rolling. They're 8-2, and season's going to come down to that game. I believe it's in Tempe, so they better flush this one and get ready for a charged up crowd and a 4-quarter fight, to say for sure. This is like that Georgia type game where their backs against the wall. They're going to have to fight, except they're going into enemy territory. No room for error if they want to still have a shot at the Big 12 title game and the college football playoff. All right. South Carolina, number 21 South Carolina, beats number 23 Missouri in one of the more wild games of the day. Missouri, Brady Cook played in this game. I did not think he would play in this game. Part of the reason why I took South Carolina in the points. But he started. Nate Noel had a really nice day. Theo Weiss and Luther Burden had a really nice day. They combined for 14 catches on the day. Missouri, if I were to tell you Missouri would outrush South Carolina, I would say they'd have a pretty good chance to win, especially on the road. That's what you need to do, because South Carolina wants to run the football effectively enough to where, you take the pressure off Lenore Sellers, no matter how well he's been playing. It's always good to be, you have Rocket Sanders, who's been on a really nice tear lately. So for them to go in and outrush them at Williams-Brice, really nice. And they had the lead. They took the lead with 1:10 left in the game, 30-27. It was like a 30-yard catch by Luther Burden that took the lead. All they needed to do was get one stop. They could not, though. Rocket Sanders, game-winning touchdown catch with 15 seconds left in the game to take the lead, 34-30. But the story of the game, Lenore Sellers, he's just a star is emerging right in front of our very eyes. This is, from where he started the season at being his first full year starting, and it started slow where, the passing stuff wasn't really there. You could obviously see what he had running the football, but now he's getting the throwing part down, and it's really dangerous and really awesome to see. 21-30, 353 yards, 5 touchdowns. He did throw a pick, but 5 touchdowns, over 350 yards, and efficient with the football. Massive win for South Carolina, who's 7-3. They're probably the best 3-loss team in the country. And this is a scary team right now, folks, that if you have them on your schedule remaining going forward this season and then going into next season, you need to look out and be prepared, because the Gamecocks are coming. That's all I'm going to say. All right. We're going to head around the country now, as there were some other big games on the weekend that necessarily weren't headlining type games, but we need to give them their credit. Arizona State beat number 16 Kansas State, speaking of the Sun Devils, 24-14. They moved to 8-2 on the year, and they still have a chance at the Big 12 title game, but they must beat BYU to stay alive in that race. Give me 1 second here. All right. Number 17, Colorado beats Utah 49-24. Colorado controls their own destiny. We talked about this last week based off the playoff rankings. Where they're at 17, they will obviously move up. Everything's in front of them. They sit right now at second in the Big 12 standings. If they just win out, they will be in the Big 12 title game. And if they win that, they will be in the playoff. But again, caution to the wind. Kansas coming up. They need to be ready for anything. They have Oklahoma State after that. They should win that. But again, anything can happen in this sport. Obviously, we've seen this season. Number 20, Clemson survives Pitt on a Cade Klubnik 50-yard run to take the lead 24-20 with just over a minute to go in the game. Clemson got outrushed in this game, and they looked dead in the water. But that big run by their quarterback saved their game, saved their season, I think, outlook, and keeps them rolling here. You know, they've done a nice job bouncing back after that really bad loss to Louisville with road wins at Virginia Tech and then at Pitt, trying to still build some momentum here. And again, they're still right there in the ACC. They're still going to need some help, though. They need Miami or SMU to fall again. Realistically, Miami, because SMU is still undefeated in conference play. But again, Miami falls again. Their defense hasn't helped them out at all this year. I mean, if they fall again here to Syracuse or Wake Forest, Clemson right there to hop back into that first or second place spot and head back to Charlotte. And then number 25, Tulane beats Navy 35-0. The Green Wave will clinch the second spot in the AAC title game. They will take on Army on conference title game weekend. And John Sumrall and this group right here has done a great job. After a couple of tough early losses to out-of-conference teams like Kansas State and Oklahoma, this is a very dangerous team that I don't think anybody wants to play postseason-wise. And if Boise State slips up here, I mean, Tulane, obviously, we're pro-Army. If they get past Army, I mean, Tulane, be very, very careful. That's all I'm going to say there. And finally, to round out the episode, unfortunately, we have to own up. We cannot run when we are living on a high on the best bets winning trail. Obviously, we're on cloud 9. But like we always say, we try to be as humble as possible, because when we get weekends like this, when we go 0-4, we have to remember what got us there. And unfortunately, it was a tough weekend. We had LSU -3.5. Unfortunate there. We had South Carolina and Oregon both -14. Unfortunate stuff there. And we had BYU money. So it was a tough weekend for sure. Still 10 games over 500. So again, we had a tough weekend 2 weeks ago. We bounced back and went on a 5-2 tear. Just saying, stick around. I like what I'm seeing so far in this Saturday slate coming up. So don't leave. Don't abandon ship yet. We're still right there. We're gonna finish the season out strong. Just gotta trust the process. Trust the process for sure. And speaking of process, that's gonna be it. I don't know what transition that was, but that's gonna be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast, because we are trying to build and race to 200 subscribers. The only way we can do that, though, is to hit that subscribe button, like, share the videos, or if you're listening on Spotify, follow there as well, because that's the only way we can build this podcast. And I just need your guys' help to do that. So make sure you guys are doing that. If you want to follow me on social media at DeLauder Hunter and Instagram at hunter.delauder83, make sure you guys do that as well. We'll be back Thursday for week 13 preview. Hard to believe we're already there. But until then, make sure you guys are sharing, and watching the podcast. I'll see you next time. Until then, have a good